Hello, good morning. Welcome to today's morning bulletin. The morning after the night before. Liverpool might never have been this good. Manchester United might never have been this bad. Myself, Matt Addison and David Lynch here with you today to have a bit of a chat about Liverpool 4, Manchester United 0. And before we kind of get on to Manchester United, there's been a lot of talk about how bad they are, David. But let's talk Liverpool first. Thiago was absolutely magical, albeit he probably won't ever play in an easier game than that one.
Yeah, probably has to work a bit harder to sort of find the space to play in a lot of other games against teams lower down the table. But yeah, you can't take away from the quality he showed on the ball yesterday. Not just on the ball, actually. That probably sort of plays down his performance, because I just thought every element of midfield play from him yesterday was just perfect, wasn't it? It's just that incredible ability, and I think he's one of those unique players, isn't he, in terms of you can see every part of the pitch at all times, seems to know where every other player is. And then alongside that, has got the ability to play the pass to them. And that, off the outside of his foot, left foot, right foot, inside of the foot, any sort of pass you could think of, with his head, with his chest, any way the ball comes to him, he knows how to move it on. And he already knows 2 seconds ahead where he's going to move it. Just a phenomenal footballer. And I think, it's so nice to see that now, because obviously his first season in Liverpool was quite difficult. That injury picked up quite early doors, sort of made it difficult for him, didn't it? But, we've seen now since then, since he's got a consistent run of games together, we're seeing the real Thiago Alcantara now, and you can see why Jurgen Klopp was so desperate to get him in. He's a world-class midfielder.
Yeah, 10 out of 10, a rarity from Ian Doyle in his Echo player ratings last night. And even that felt a little bit harsh, to be honest. But it's just one of those performances that just makes you smile, isn't it? It's like you say, it's a complete contrast to some of what we were seeing of him at times last season. Obviously, we know the kind of circumstances around that. But what do you think it is that has changed? Is it just that Liverpool have centre-backs now? They've got a team around him that can make him perform like this. Was there ever a point where you thought that this maybe wouldn't come for him in a Liverpool shirt?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was a little worried at times. I think, you've got to say that the Bundesliga, particularly at the moment, I think is not quite on the same level as the Premier League. And I know for certain that the pace of the game is totally different. The amount of closing down that happens. And, I think you can imagine a player of that ability being able to sometimes coast through games in the Bundesliga, whereas I think in the Premier League, I know it gets oversaid sometimes. It's sort of, over-egged maybe that the Premier League is the greatest league in the world. But I think you look at the quality of the managers and the players that are there now and all the money that's in it, I don't think there's any argument really. So I thought, at first when his form was a little bit patchy, even taking into account the issues Liverpool were having elsewhere and the fact he'd picked up that injury that really sort of hurt his rhythm, you were a little worried, is this a step too far? Can he do what he did so consistently for Bayern at Liverpool? Or are we just going to see him in sort of flashes? Is he going to be that sort of player? But I think, time in the training ground, having a solid team around him and getting more used really to what Jurgen Klopp wants of him, it's all come together this season. And, I feel bad for doubting him really, considering the quality of his recent performances. Just an unbelievable footballer. You do see that, don't you, really, is that the highest quality footballers, okay, they might struggle at the start to get used to things, but they'll always get there in the end because their quality is undoubted, and he's obviously in that category.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the midfield is really interesting at the moment. Obviously, Thiago and Fabinho, we know what they can do. And then it's kind of that third spot, isn't it, between Jordan Henderson and Naby Keita, really, who's managed to put a bit of form together. Obviously, it was Henderson last night. What do you think happens now with Naby Keita? It's a really interesting situation. I think you can see, obviously, Jordan Henderson's role in future seasons might become a little bit more sporadic, but there is that opportunity for Naby Keita, and finally it does look, touch wood, that he's kind of staying fit and managing to do a little bit over the last few games, and possibly would feel a little bit unfortunate not to have played much last night.
Yeah, I expected Henderson to come in just because of the tight turnaround, and you really do have to look after Naby Keita, don't you? He can still pick up those muscular injuries, and you don't want that at this point of the season, because he's really coming to the fore as an important player. I think the semi-final was an interesting one, wasn't it, in the FA Cup that he went with Naby. I think in at any point previous, even in this season, I don't think you would have seen that. I think, the nailed on midfield in the biggest of games would have had Jordan Henderson in it alongside the other two. So the fact that he went with Naby and then he performed as well as he did, I think has possibly really changed things for the run-in, to be honest. And I think you've got to admit that I think Henderson is struggling at the moment. I don't think he's possibly showing his best form. I think, he can be a bit erratic on the ball at the moment and not quite getting there. Obviously, the work rate and the standard setting is all there, all the things that we like about him. But yeah, I don't think he's in fantastic form at the moment, which has opened up an opportunity for Keita. And I think he's taken it with both hands. For me, really, if you say you have a big game tomorrow, who do you pick? So say you've got to play City again. I think Naby Keita starts that game. Which is, a real change of fortunes for him and Henderson, really, considering the past few years. So I think that's the benefits, really, of having this really high quality squad, isn't it? At the end of the day, you can't just keep your shirt if you're not hitting the standards. And if someone else is coming in and they are able to do what's asked of them, then that's going to happen. And I think, no matter who Jurgen Klopp goes with, for the remainder of the season, it's going to be the one who's training the best and playing the best, and for us really watching on, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have that sort of competition, isn't it? But I think it's particularly interesting with Naby Keita because it's only sort of 2 or 3 months ago we were kind of having these discussions around, it's probably going to be him or Oxlade-Chamberlain that gets a new contract, maybe not both of them. Which is it going to be? I think we've probably definitively answered that question now. Whether that does have an impact on Chamberlain is kind of a separate point. But in terms of Naby Keita, it's surely just inevitable that he gets that new contract now.
Well, I don't know yet, to be honest, because I think the one thing I would say is that obviously FSG and the club as a whole are not prone to emotional decisions. So even if he plays a key role between now and the end of the season in terms of bringing a quadruple to Anfield, I still don't know how much the previous injuries and the patchy form that's followed that will sort of weigh heavily on the mind. I think midfield's a really interesting area because, the likelihood is that James Milner leaves this season. Jordan Henderson's role then probably changes to a James Milner type, or what James Milner has been for Liverpool in recent seasons. But I still think if there's one area in the squad where you think there's, I won't say weakness because this is an unbelievable team and squad, but I'd say the one area where you think they could get, just one more player in of real high quality would take them on to even another level again. So I think, it's an interesting one. I wouldn't think that there's sort of any rush to give Naby Keita a contract yet. I don't think my understanding is not really any talks at the moment around that. But it's a difficult one, as you say, because I think, you look at him in current form and you think, I'd love to have him around. He's been a really important squad player this year, actually, in terms of just filling in from time to time. He's been consistently available. But I think Liverpool, will they be a little bit too scarred by what's gone before? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, especially interesting, I think, because of his age as well. I think if he was slightly older, that decision would be very complicated. But just the age he is, it kind of feels to me like possibly at some point that might happen, but we'll see. Let's move on to the forward line as well. Obviously, lots of talk around a goal drought, as it were, for Mohamed Salah. Not quite a drought when he scored 3 from the penalty spot in that time, but no goal from open play until last night in a couple of months. But I suppose that can only be a good thing for Liverpool as well, looking ahead for the rest of this season, to not have to talk about that, to not have to think about Salah not having scored from open play. Well, he's not just done it once now, he's done it twice.
Yeah, really, really good timing, to be honest, because, if he can get on a little run between now and the end of the season, there's nothing but big games ahead now. And if he can, pull off one of those streaks like he did early in the season where he seems to score every game or score twice every game, then that would be pretty handy timing. And also, you'd imagine that Liverpool are going to end up with at least one more trophy if that is the case. I think with his, like you said, the goal drought, I think he had been in a lot of those games, had been playing well, hadn't he, to be fair, and getting in the positions and also providing assists as well. So, we're never too worried about him. But it is always nice to see him get back on the score sheet just for his own confidence in front of goal. And you really hope that that's going to provide a platform now for him to kick on and have a really big run to the end of the season. Because as I say, I think if he does that, it's all in massive games. So you just imagine that Liverpool are going to end up with a trophy off the back of that.
And Sadio Mane, of course, alongside him, absolutely brilliant again yesterday. That might have been his best performance, I think, in terms of this number 9 role. He's been playing so well there. It does, again, feel like there's just a new lease of life been put into him. He's possibly struggled a little bit at times in terms of the last couple of seasons, but this new role, he just looks like a completely brand new player again.
It does. It genuinely, it's the cliche does feel a little bit like a new signing just because he provides such a different threat and it brings different elements of his qualities out to play that role. I think, I think maybe there's an element of he's not quite as blistering as he was in years prior, which will naturally happen to any footballer. That's, and I mean, we're talking barely perceptible absence of pace, but, you may be starting to see that a little bit in terms of burning past people out wide. So the idea that he can just come in and play this centre forward role and play it so well, and he still get all the benefits of his movement and his ability to finish once he gets into one-on-one positions, it's just perfect. And I think, Liverpool, like I say, like a new signing between now and the end of the season, and it just adds another layer of depth to that quality that they've got. Allows you to fit Luis Diaz in the team, who's started so impressively as well. Just gives you real options. I mean, it's interesting really now because where do what does that mean for Jota and Firmino between now and the end of the season? Because you'd like to see them both get games. It's so important. They played really well. Neither of them really deserves to be sat on the bench, and yet you've got Sadio Mane there probably clogging up the centre forward position. It's enviable depth that Liverpool have got, and I think that can be really important. Not just in changing games late on, but also in terms of can Liverpool take goal difference out of the equation in terms of this title race as well? Because I think in previous seasons, you'd have said Manchester City would 100% finish with the better goal difference of the two, and Liverpool have just got to get more points. If it does come down to goal difference now, Liverpool are 9 ahead, I think, now at the moment, with the City having a game in hand. That could be the thing that wins them the title.
Yeah, it certainly could. Manchester City, of course, playing tonight against Brighton. I'm sure lots of Liverpool fans will tune into that one and have their fingers crossed. But I suppose Brighton have had a couple of decent results recently, not against a team as good as Manchester City, we have to say. But I don't know, it's one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, if you look at their home form is pretty appalling, isn't it? And that's the reason they're not sort of challenging for Europe this season. But their away form is decent, and you do hope that, I think they're a team who sort of they can go into a game like that and know exactly what they're set up to do, and they're dangerous enough on the break. I think Graham Potter tactically really good in terms of finding ways to sort of clog City's midfield up and not make it easy for them to play through. I think you certainly have more faith in Brighton maybe pulling off a surprise result than a lot of other teams in the league, because I think they've got a certain level of quality in that squad, and also a manager who really knows what he's doing. So I don't think I wouldn't advise any Liverpool fans to watch it, just because that'd probably be quite painful, to be honest. But yeah, maybe just keep an eye on the score from afar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if only away games counted in the Premier League, Brighton would be 6th. So certainly a much better team away from home than they are at home. Just to finish then, a word on Manchester United. I honestly can't get over how bad they were last night. It does feel like the gulf really has never been this bad. We've seen bad Liverpool teams over the years. We've seen good Manchester United teams, but it doesn't ever feel like we've seen a game quite like that.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, sometimes I think character gets invoked a little bit too much when he's talking about professional football, in terms of everyone just thinks if my team tried harder, they would be better. And, this, generally speaking, across the Premier League, there's a level of professionalism that means they are trying the hardest. But watching that game last night, I refuse to accept that was the best Manchester United could do, because you saw that 15-minute spell they had in the second half where they actually did put some work in and they actually bothered to try up until Liverpool scored the third, and you could see that what had gone before, it was pretty shameful, really. I just think you touched on it there, really, is that as bad as Liverpool were over the years at times, and as good as Manchester United were, it never felt like that. It was never not, that was just a complete lack of effort, of application, any plan, just a complete unwillingness to sort of turn it into a battle, even if you were going to lose the game. The difference between those sides should not be 9-0 on aggregate over the season, because at the end of the day, Manchester United are in a challenging for the top 4. I'm pretty sure they won't get there, given, off the back of that result particularly, but they're in the mix there. They're not that bad. And I've seen teams who are fighting relegation put up more of a fight against Liverpool. So it is down to character, because they've got a certain level of quality. They should be just trying harder and not want to be humiliated in the way they have been in these 2 games. So I think, the Manchester United players should be thoroughly embarrassed. And even if there are certain players in that squad that, as they sort of move forward and try and put together a title winning squad from here under a new manager from next season onwards, I think even there's some players who you think, okay, maybe they've got the quality to be part of the squad, but I don't think they've got the character, and they've shown that this season and certainly in these games against Liverpool, because just embarrassing yesterday, to be honest, from their perspective.
Yeah, it's a long way back. I think another game, though, for Liverpool, comfortably taken care of. Another big one next, of course, in the Merseyside derby as well. We'll have all of the build-up to that, then the Champions League semi-finals, and so much more over the course of the next few weeks. What a time it is to be a Liverpool fan. For now, though, that will just about do us. We'll see you very soon.